That's a good question. I don't know about what episode, but I would like to see. I'd like to see him go toe to toe with Joe, because Joe could probably knock some sense into this guy, or at least show you that soft, chewy middle that it takes a while to kind of see in this film. Hopefully you guys saw that and excused a bit of his misbehaving.
When you're cursing at a kid, though, I would feel really bad. I mean, I know you're just acting, but do you have to like apologize when the camera shuts off? Like after you just called some kid some terrible word, like do you say I'm sorry?
I mean, you want to, and sometimes I would actually, but in this case, all these kids got to read the script before they auditioned for the role, and sort of by definition wanted the part, right? So, but I did feel obligated to try to communicate tone and the spirit of the stuff that we were doing, and try to convince them that we were going for a little bit more of a sophisticated agenda underneath all of this sometimes lowbrow, cheap shot stuff that this guy is sort of. He's kind of drawn to do, because he's not that evolved, you know.
Well, I think you did a great job of balancing out like a harsh comedy with it, but also a redeeming quality of the character. Questions from the audience for Mr. Jason Bateman.
Don't be shy.
Yeah, don't be shy. Yes, you sir, right here. Why'd you want to make this movie?
I wanted to make this because it seemed, well, first of all, the sense of humor in it, I'm ashamed to say, is similar to mine. A little dark, but I saw that there was a good challenge here to clearly the script was really funny, but I saw that if it was going to be somewhat palatable for an audience, I would have to show that there's a bit of an emotional problem with this guy, and that his feelings have been hurt, and we actually say that right at the beginning. But there's a sillier, I think, more studio version of this that might not be so interested in trying to show some of the nuances of this guy's baggage, and I'm not drawn to that stuff as much. I've certainly been in those kinds of movies, but my first opportunity to direct, I wanted to take on something that might be a little bit more complicated, and also would lend itself to something that looks a little bit different than a studio film, kind of make it feel like it's a little more raw and exposed, like the characters.
You sir. Yes.
Between Identity
Why did you
Thief,
get a mic?
between like Identity Thief, Horrible Bosses, and now this, you kind of play like good guys who get to act out a little bit. Is that a little bit of wish fulfillment?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the main reason I jumped to this, but it was certainly appealing that this guy was an antagonist as opposed to the protagonist I usually play. However, when you play the straight man, the middle man all the time, usually that guy is pretty vulnerable and insecure and susceptible to being rattled. And I knew that if I was going to try to find the kind of balance needed to make this guy somewhat palatable, you'd need to show flashes of doubt and vulnerability. And so I had some of those tricks up my sleeve from the character I usually play.
Jason, are you saying the F word on the poster? Is that
I'm saying funny. Come see it. Yeah, I think that is. I'm not sure what scene that was taken in, but that's from the movie. The on-set, the still photographer grabbed that from at some point.
All right, next question. Superman shirt.
At the end of the credits, it said the film was dedicated to someone. Who was that?
That's Jared Rodriguez. Jared was a friend of mine who I worked with, and he worked hard on this film. He's a guy I met a few years ago, and he passed between the finished, when we finished the film and before we sold it at Toronto. And I just know how much he loved working on the film, and I just thought it would be kind of a nice thing to just kind of stamp him to it and keep him alive a bit, for me at least, with this film.
Next question.
Question over here.
Yes, right here.
What's your favorite word?
My favorite bad word. I actually do like them all, but because again, you have to overuse the word challenge. But it's nice. They're fun to use. If that's the challenge. Try to find the right moment and make sure it's fun for both sides of it. You saying it and the person receiving it.
Next question. Yes.
How did you decide to read the letter in the beginning and end? And also, do you man your own Twitter?
I'm not very diligent about the Twitter stuff, although I do look at it from time to time. Certainly right now I'm a bit more on it because we're trying to clock if people are liking the film or not. There's nothing we can do about it now because it's all locked, but we are still very curious. The letter, you know, the narration is a crutch. I admit that, but we needed it in this film so that we could. It earned us kind of some bigger swings comedically, not in excusing his behavior, but in explaining it a little bit. In the fact that he's contrite. I mean, the whole, you know, starts with an apology at the beginning, and you think that it's narration. And as we were developing the script, I thought, would it not be interesting if this whole thing was an apology letter that you find is what you think was narration was actually the apology letter that his dad's reading. So I tried to make it a little bit more creative instead of just that crutch of a stitch all the way through a film that sometimes films use with narration. It ends up serving that purpose, but I tried to put it in a little bit more of a creative context.
Were there any scenes that were too harsh when you showed them to people? They're like, you gotta take that one out.
People still have trouble with the menstruations.
Yeah.
My wife wants that one out. So. But you know, that was a toughie. I still have a tough time watching that. There's you know, this guy is not, he's not us. He's got very poor judgment, and that's another case of narration. That little piece of narration that precedes that scene was not there up until when we were almost done with the film. And it just still felt really harsh to me, and so I added that line about my behavior was terrible at best. I'm lucky I didn't get killed by the parents or something like that. And even the music, we had to try to soften a little bit, so it wasn't so sort of devious and frank, but more like it was meant to kind of serve this guy's character, that this guy's a little off. And there were some other lines in the film that got jettisoned well before we shot it because they were clearly over the line.
Any of you like to repeat?
No.
Next person with the mic? Yes, you.
So, why didn't you name the movie Badass? I'm sorry, it's Guy's character told me, so never mind. No, actually, my question is basically, so if somebody else would direct this movie, like, what would they have done different, in your opinion?
Good question. There's a lot of, as I said earlier, there's a sillier version of this film. And there's many versions of this film. There's really not a right way or wrong way to make any movie and to say any line or play any character. And it all comes down to an execution of taste, which in films it's usually that's the director's prerogative. In television, it's usually the producer-writer's prerogative. So in this, there was a specificity of tone that I was trying to hit, and that necessitated a particular conversation with each department. The camera was carrying certain water, and the music was carrying others, and you're trying to shape an experience for an audience, not to sound too, you know, but I mean that's the creative challenge of the director, and that's why I've always wanted that responsibility and that privilege. Frankly, this kind of asked me to hit a kind of a pretty small target, And it's going to miss for a lot of people. Certainly, the film is not for everyone. But we shot it for not a lot of money, so we didn't have to round all the edges, because we don't have to get 1 trillion people to see it to have the investors get their money back. We just need a few of you fine folks. It's more than just a few.
Tweet about it, hashtag bad words movies.
Badass.
Yeah, it's a Mario Van Peebles movie, isn't it? I think so. Alright, next person. Who has the mic? Yes.
What was your favorite scene to film?
Favorite scene to film? Catherine Hahn and I are really good friends. I had fun doing the sex scenes with her. She's really, really funny, and it's just, I don't know how many of you guys have kind of gone at it with your friend, but it's uncomfortable. About 4 takes into doing the scene in the custodian closet there, I finally thought, well, why don't we just put a pillow between us, and that way it will be a little less uncomfortable for us to go at it with the vigor that the scene was calling for. So that helped things. But then what made it difficult on every take was the fact that a director has a little TV monitor that they can hold around, carry around with them, so they can see what the camera is getting. So I put this little TV monitor right behind her head, so I could see what the camera was getting. And so it was kind of what a sexual deviant might do. As he's going at it. It was not sexy.
Next question. Who is the mic? Yep.
Hi, Jason. My name's Richard.
Hello, Richard.
Hi.
You know Rich Klein?
Did you have to cast a wide net to find your young co-star, or did you kind of have him in mind? And also, my phone is dead, but is that the young boy from Homeland?
Yes.
Yes. I thought there might be a joke there in the phone being dead. I don't know. Homeland and also Lone Survivor. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
Yes, that it was him.
I have not seen it, but I hear he's not bad.
That is him.
With that film. They shot it at the same time. Yeah, Pete Bird
Busy
and I
kid.
were fighting over him. That was in Arizona. We had to keep putting him on a plane. The net was wide, yes, and I honestly did not know how to judge the talent of an 11-year-old actor. It's tough to know what's good acting and what's bad acting, really. And so I saw about 30 kids. Finally went back to Rohan's tape, because he lives in not England, in New York, close. He did a self-tape, and I saw that, and so I went back and I looked at that, and he had that necessary sunny, and he's just like, that kid's so adorable. You need that to counterbalance the cynicism of Guy's character. And so I said to the producer, I said, well, can we fly him out? And can I meet with him to see if this is real, or whether it's mom and dad just kind of coached him to read these scenes this way. And so, well, we don't really have the money to fly him out. How do you feel about a Skype session? I said, great. So we did a Skype session, and he was adorable. And then they flew him out, and we worked together a couple days, and then started shooting.
I'm assuming his parents were on set during the...
They were, yes. His dad was very much understood what I was attempting to do, and so he trusted me. And his mother stayed in New York because they have another kid, so she was calling in often. The frequency went up the night of the marzipan scene. She wanted to know what the strategy was there, whether he would be exposed to the... Which, listen, again, it's not something that's going to work for everyone, but... I mean, people sunbathe topless in Europe, and they're not raising a continent full of murderers, so I think there was something so horrific about that. But nonetheless, I made sure he was comfortable.
Next question? Who is Yes, you.
Hi, so I'm sure I'm not the only one here who watched the 4th season of Arrested Development in a truly embarrassing amount of time. I guess, what do you think about the Netflixification of television?
I think what Netflix is doing is really exciting, and we really felt privileged to be a part of that initial effort. I think it was really cool that the guy who created Arrested Development and is responsible for what you enjoy, what I enjoy. I was a big fan of the show too, embarrassed to say. He tried to make those episodes unique to the format of Arrested Development, in that there was a bit of a user interface there, and you could watch them in any order, yada yada. So it was nice to be a part of that. And, they haven't talked to me about doing any more, but I certainly would love to.
Take your character from this movie, drop one in.
Yeah, exactly. Michael Blue's evil brother.
One more question for Mr. Bateman. Yes.
Hi, I was wondering, so in the movie it's called the Quill National Spelling Bee. Did you approach the people who do the scripts National Spelling Bee?
Yeah, it was actually written for the Scripps National Spelling Bee here in your glorious district. Yes. Yeah, I am right. So it was written for the Scripps Spelling Bee to be televised on ESPN. And I knew that our budget wouldn't let us replicate the production values of the ESPN broadcast, nor would Scripps come anywhere near stamping this movie. So I just made a little switch in the script to make it the second best spelling bee, the oldest spelling bee, and to have it be televised on public television, and to have it be in Los Angeles, since that's where I live, and the place where we shot it sits directly between my house and my daughter's school, so I can still drive her to school and make it work.
Two more things before Jason goes. Jason and I did an interview earlier, and it's going to air on Fox 5 here in D.C. the week of March 21st when the movie is released here in Washington, D.C. We had a good time, and it'll be... We did. It was awesome. So tune in for that on Fox 5, and we want to get a quick picture of everybody holding up their cards. The cards that have the hashtag on it. Can you take a quick picture?
They didn't?
Hold them all up. This is going to be on Twitter. So hold those and make sure you use hashtag #BadWordsMovie when you're tweeting about this.
I'm not responsible for this portion of the evening.
Yeah, neither am I.
You want to share?
You guys are beautiful.
Alright guys, Jason, thank you so much for coming here. To remain seated, Jason has to be somewhere very shortly, so we're going to have him leave first, and then everybody can leave after him. Jason, thank you so much.